Alright, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be looking at Panharmonument, a budget standard deck with a very weird name, I know. So this deck was inspired by the white-blue Monument deck. I saw it like a month ago when looking through some tournament results, and it intrigued me just because it was so budget-friendly. The top tier 1 version of the deck was running around 100 to 150 tickets. I mean, that's pretty cheap for, a deck that is top 8ing major tournaments. So I was kind of intrigued, and I was wondering if we could make a budget version of it. And while I was looking through the deck list, I realized that it actually shared a lot in common with the white-blue Panharmonicon deck. With some exceptions, they were very different decks, but there was a lot of overlap. So I was like, what would happen if we kind of blended these two decks together? And, would it be an awful, just a terrible piece of crap? Or would it be playable? And, it was very experimental. I already had the white-blue Panharmonicon deck because I was experimenting with it on Magic Online. So I was like, why not spend a little bit of money, spend a few tickets, and just kind of experiment with this. And this is the deck that came out of that. Now, I would say that by now, it shares nothing in common with the original deck list. We've gone into a completely different deck. But it's kind of interesting. I've had a lot of fun kind of experimenting with this thing. And I think it's good enough, actually, to feature on the channel. So let's give it a look, and we'll be playing some games with it after this deck tech. So first off, obviously, it has 4 Catcher's Monument and 4 Panharmonicon. This is what makes the deck super clunky, because our 3rd and 4th turn want to be dedicated to playing an artifact that doesn't actually do anything the turn it comes into play. So that's a long stretch of just not doing anything. So that's why it's super clunky. But if we can get past that and into turns 5, 6, 7, this deck becomes very difficult to deal with. So first off, on the Catcher's Monument side of things, we have Handwear Militia Captain. It's a 2-mana 2/2, doesn't do much, but it can transform if we have 4 creatures or more. And when it transforms, it has power and toughness equal to the number of creatures we control. This is one of the win conditions of the Catcher's Monument deck, just because it's a big, giant creature. It also puts out more and more creatures every turn. It feeds itself, basically. It creates a token every turn, which in turn makes the cult leader bigger. We're also going to be running 2 Westvale Abbeys. It's a land that produces colorless mana. We can pay 5 and tap it to put a 1/1 creature into play by paying 1 life as well. But the most important part here is pay 5, tap it, sacrifice 5 creatures to transform it, and it transforms into this. Yeah, a 9/7 flying, life leak, indestructible, and haste. This is our main win condition in the original Monument deck. I mean, this is very devastating. Just the life leak alone will create a huge swing. We're talking about an 18-point swing if this thing lands a hit. I mean, it's huge. And all we have to do is sacrifice 5 creatures that we got for free from Catcher's Monument anyways. So this is the way we win in the Catcher's Monument route. Unfortunately, we're only running 2 because it's not quite budget friendly. You could definitely run 3 or 4 of these, and that would be absolutely fine. If you can get one of these every game, you're good. And then next up, we have I think these might be the only overlap cards that were in the original deck. We're going to be running 4 Thraben Inspectors, 4 Cloud Blazers. These were both in the original Monument and Panharmonicon decks. Thraben Inspector, a 1-mana 1/2 that generates a 1/1 token with Monument and gives us a clue token. And then with Panharmonicon, we get 2 clue tokens. Cloud Blazer, obviously, it's just card advantage. 5 mana, draw 2 cards, gain 2 life. Not a bad deal. Even better with Panharmonicon because we gain 4 life, draw 4 cards, which is insanely good. And then, obviously, if we have both Monument and Panharmonicon in play, it's a 4 mana 2/2 flying, put a 1/1 token into play, gain 4 life, draw 4 cards, which is just crazy. Next up, this is where things get really weird because we're running 4 Pious Evangel. Now, this is not a typical choice in, any deck list ever. It's just not something that people play. It's really interesting in this deck though. So first off, with Monument, every single time we get a creature, we get 2 triggers off of it. So we're getting 2 life for every single creature we play, which isn't bad. But then with Panharmonicon in play, we also get double those triggers. So if we get both of our artifacts in play, we're gaining 4 life with every single creature we put into the battlefield. And this is what is going to push the deck into the late game. It seems weird, right? This is our version of like a counter spell. Right, you don't win the game with a counter spell. Counter spells allow you to negate your opponent's plays until you can push the game into the late game. And that's exactly what this does. We're just looking to throw this into play and then let this keep us in the game until we push it into turns 6, 7, 8, and so on. And that's when we look to win the game. It should be noted that this can also transform into Wayward Disciple. I don't find that to be worth it most of the time. It can be done in response to like a Fumigate or something like that. But for the most part, I would rather have the enter the battlefield triggers, because the triggers off of Wayward Disciple don't double from Panharmonicon. So, it's okay if you have tons of tokens in play, but for the most part, I almost always want to leave this unflipped. We're also going to be running 2 Sunscourge Champion. This is going to make a little bit more sense a little bit later. But it's a 3-mana 2/3. When it comes into play, we gain life equal to its power, which is okay. It's a 3-mana 2/3. When it comes into play, we gain 2 life. With Oketcher's Monument, it's a 2-mana 2/3, gain 2 life, put a token into play. With the Monument and the Panharmonicon, it's a 2-mana 2/3, put a token into play, gain 4 life, and so forth. That's why this deck is so interesting, is that we just get so much value out of all of this. This is when we start doubling our triggers and we start getting tokens and we make everything cheaper. It starts getting kind of ridiculous. And we have Thalia's Lieutenant, which again seems like a really weird choice. This is a humans deck, is it? Well, if you look back, it actually kind of is. Everything we've played so far is a human. So we basically have, in addition to a Panharmonicon deck, Oketcher's Monument deck, we also just so happen to have a tribal humans sub-theme as well. So Thalia's Lieutenant, 2 mana. When it comes into play, put a +1/+1 counter on all of our humans. And then whenever a human comes into play, we put a +1/+1 counter on it. Now, unfortunately, the monument tokens aren't human, they're warriors, which is disappointing. But this is really, really good with Panharmonicon. Just getting those double triggers when it comes into play. Putting, 2 +1/+1 counters on everything, and then this gets +2/+2 every single time we play something. That gets ridiculous, and these things get out of hand really fast. And next up, we have the only non-humans in the deck. We have 2 Angel of Invention and 2 Oketcher the True. So Angel of Invention is a fantastic game finisher for us. It's a 5-mana 2/1, Flying Vigilance lifelink, and it has Fabricate 2, which means we can put 2 tokens into play or put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. And then all other creatures get +1/+1. This gets really good with Panharmonicon because we can double up on Fabricate. So we can get 4 tokens, or we can make this a 6/5 Flying Vigilance lifelink. All other creatures get +1/+1 for 5 mana. Totally worth it. Really good with Panharmonicon. I would totally put more of these in. Unfortunately, they're a little bit pricey right now because of God Pharaoh's Gifts. But yeah, it's a great way to finish the game in this deck. And Oketcher the True is just underrated. It's a great finisher with a go wide strategy. Trust me, we are almost always going to have 3 creatures or more. It's almost always going to be active. This deck just puts out tons of tokens. It's not a problem. And Oketcher the True is just another way for us to win the game. So next up, we have a single copy of Thalia's Lancers. I added this just to have a way to find Oketcher's Monument. It's basically a 5th copy of it, but obviously there are going to be times when we already have the monument when we hit a Thalia's Lancers. So I added some utility legendary cards. If we don't have a monument, we can use this to find it. And if we do, we have other targets. So first off, we have Oketcher the True from the last screen. We're also going to be running 1 Temet. So Temet works really well with Sunscourge Champion. It gives us a 5/5 unblockable if we get both of those. Not a key point in this deck. It's just something that can happen, and when it does, super useful. It can also make our warrior tokens unblockable. We also have a Gaia Reach Sanitarium. Apology if I'm pronouncing that wrong. But yeah, it's just a legendary land, not something useful, but it's something to target. Finally, the only spell in the entire deck is Dusk to Dawn. So Dusk says destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. Remember, this is a go wide deck. We're putting tons of tokens into play, small tokens. So Dusk can wipe our opponent's board, and then we can just all out attack with a bunch of tokens. It can win the game. Now, if we play Dawn from the graveyard, it returns all cards with power 2 or less from our graveyard to our hand. That's going to be the vast majority of the deck. So let's look at the sideboard really quick. First off, we have Authority of the Consuls, one of those. There are a lot of aggro decks running around, whether it's red aggro or zombies or something like that. We have 2 Fragmentize because, artifacts. We have 1 Immolating Glare, 1 Stasis Snare. Gives us a little bit of control over creatures if it's necessary. We have 1 Dispel, 1 Turn Aside, 2 Essence Scatter, and 2 Negates. Plenty of ways to sideboard and to control if we need to. We have a lot of variety here, and we can go in whatever direction we want to. We've also got 2 Padim, Console of Innovation. This is good for long grindy games, which most of our games are very long and very grindy. We don't have a lot of ways to be super aggressive early. We tend to just push the game into late game by gaining tons and tons of life. So this is a good way to just get tons of value. I have it in the sideboard because if your opponent's playing artifacts, that might not be useful. But if your opponent doesn't have any artifacts, it's definitely worth at least bringing 1 in as another Thalia's Lancer target. And being able to just slap that into play, give your artifacts hexproof, and then draw an extra card every turn is super useful. I'm surprised it's not played more. We also have 2 Crook of Condemnation for God Pharaoh's Gifts. When I was playtesting this deck, I got matched up against a God Pharaoh's Gifts deck. I had no Graveyard Hate in my sideboard. It wasn't super developed at that point, and it steamrolled me, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I should add that. That's a thing I should have. And now we have it, so we definitely want that. So that's the deck. It's very weird. I'm not going to deny it. It's a very weird deck. It's built around Catcher's Monument and Panharmonicon, and they don't even work well together. Panharmonicon does not double Oketcher Monument's tokens. And then we've got Thalia's Lieutenant, so we've got a human tribal theme going as well. It's weird. It's not exactly the most efficient thing, but the cool thing is, sometimes, literally sometimes we get a hand and we're like, okay, we're playing tribal humans this game. We have a very aggressive tribal humans hand. Sometimes we never see Monument once. But that's okay, because if we don't see Monument, then we're just playing a Panharmonicon deck, and that's fine. It's weird. It's very weird. But it's been surprisingly effective in the tournament practice room on Magic Online. It's definitely, it seems, in my experience so far, definitely an F&M level kind of deck. I wouldn't want to take this to a GP. It's not a competitive deck. But it's been fun. It's been weird. The games are grindy. I'll say that again. The games go on forever. My biggest issue is people quitting because they're just like, they just get tired of me gaining so much life that they just can't kill me. That's going to be the most difficult thing going into recording, I know. But hopefully we can get 5 games out of this. And if you want to see those games, check the description. There should be a playlist. And I will see you in the first match.